Hello, and welcome to another Happy, Healthy, Healed with Claire and Tracy. We are so lucky today to be enjoyed by someone that inspires us daily, right from the beginning.
From day one.
From day one with Atta and our water journey, we have been watching this lovely lady and learning so much from her. So we're very happy today to be interviewing her. It is Isabel Friend. She has a lovely company called Water is Life that does all sorts of lovely products, but also amazing courses.
And one-to-ones.
And one-to-ones. She's a water specialist. She's an educator of all things water. And we talk about spirituality within water, the scientific side, the biological side, everything. So we're going to try and have a real
deep dive
into
swim around.
But I suppose, well, first of all, thank you for all that you've taught us on our water journey,
and everybody else
and
as
everyone
well.
else. Yeah. So I suppose it's just starting right from the beginning and how you got into water. Where did your journey start? That's kind of what would interest us. And hello.
And hello. And thank you so much for having me. And it's such an honor and a pleasure and a privilege to get to chat with you ladies today. And your devotion to water is so inspiring to me as well. And so I'm really happy to be sharing this with you and your audience. And my journey with water began back in 2009. I was living in New York City at the time, and I was a nutritionist, and specifically I was studying nutrigenomics, which is the way that the food that we eat affects our gene expression. And when we eat wild, non-domesticated food, we have a more wild, non-domesticated gene expression closer to our wild progenitors. And then I started to think, well, wait a second, what about the water that we drink? Because, we're 70% water by volume, but molecularly, we're about 99.92% water molecules. And so I started kind of going down that rabbit hole and only drinking wild, raw, unprocessed, undomesticated, unfiltered, untreated spring water that I would go and harvest myself. And that honestly made the biggest difference in my life of anything that I had done up until that point. I used to live at an ashram, and I was, planning to take my vows of sannyas and become a monk. And I was completely devoted on the spiritual path for a long time and just spending many hours a day in meditation. And that was potent. That was profound. That changed me in irrevocable ways that I'm so grateful for. But I got to say, drinking spring water and having that direct communion of making my blood from the blood of Mother Earth and having that direct pilgrimage of gathering and harvesting made even a bigger difference to my mind, my body, my spirit, my emotions, even than that time at the ashram did. And certainly more than any, head knowledge and scientific geekery that I had gotten myself into up to that point. And even the dietary shifts that I had made, because they say that you are what you eat, but it's almost more true to say that you are the water that you drink, you are the water that is within the food that you eat, and you are the light codes and the information that water transmits into your cells. So once I started that practice, I discovered the work of Victor Schauberger, whom I'm sure you guys have probably mentioned on this podcast before. He was a naturalist from the late 1800s and early 1900s, and he had a better understanding of water than any modern hydrologist will get to in the next 1,000 years at the rate that modern hydrology is at, which is and I started to recognize from his teachings that water actually has all of the solutions to all of humanity's toughest questions. And I know that sounds like a really broad statement, but in the past 14 years of research, I have yet to disprove it. Water has the answers to our medical questions, issues of health and biology. Many researchers have found that dehydration is at the root of all disease, and that specific, intelligent, strategic rehydration protocols is the most curative thing out there. Water is nature's primary medicine. It's also true to say that water contains the solutions to our energy crisis. Victor Schauberger and others have discovered ways of making free and nearly free energy just from working in concert with the principles of water and the way that she moves in nature and the levitational properties of hydrogen and all of these incredible secrets of power that she keeps. She is the way that nature never suffers from entropy or runs out of energy nature continuously proliferates itself because it's learned how to tap into the free energy properties of water, and humanity can do that as well. Issues of climate as well. Dr. Walter Genet and other climatologists have been very outspoken in their research that has traced the current climate crisis back to drought and desertification, that it has far less to do with carbon, which only mitigates 5% of energy transfer in the atmosphere, and far more to do with the depletion of the water cycle, because water mediates 95% of energy transfer in the atmosphere. And you can see a direct correlation between the depletion of watersheds and the weather weirding patterns that happen in those areas. And of course, that's happening globally on a massive scale now. The good news about that is water can shift the climate more quickly than anything else if we start centering it primarily instead of carbon and some of these other ways that we're chasing our tail. So whether we're talking about medicine or energy or climate or ecology or economy or politics or spirituality or sociodynamic questions, water has so much to teach us. And it really is a matter of us humbling ourselves, recognizing that we don't have all of the answers as a species, and that we are drops of water. And what we steward is the capacity to tap into pure wisdom, pure energy, and pure vitality when we do humble ourselves to learn from water. So that was how I got started. And then of course, once I realized that, I was like, that's it. I have to devote my whole life to this. I'm done. I'm done with anything else. This is time.
It does make me wonder though, with that conscious connection that you have, because I was quite unaware about the ashram side of what you've just shared. So thank you for sharing that. But almost that you was in a space to be that conscious, to be able to hear that language, that she was, the way that she was connecting with you, that could also be like a really strong part of that. Because they're messages that come from water. Once we step back and we even observe with our eyes, or we connect in our heart, it's so strong, isn't it? Regardless of what we see,
Absolutely. Yeah, I feel really blessed and grateful that, I have just the geekiest, nerdiest science obsession, but then I've also been, completely devoted to God and to the spiritual path since I was 16, when I moved to the ashram. And over the course of my research and my, just experience and adventuring with water over the past 14 years, I've just kind of come to realize, wow, water speaks both languages. Water is the place where spirit and science meet, and that those two really are not separate at all. They're just using different languages to describe the same phenomena. And the more you study the science of water, the more you find the spirituality, and the more you dive into the spirituality of water, the more you discover the science of it. So it's just this beautiful harmonization that's happening, especially right now, because we're on the cutting edge of so much water science and all of these very recent discoveries and, quantum hydrobiophysics and in astrobiology and deep space and in aquaphotomics and these different aspects of water science. They're all bringing us right back to ancient indigenous water wisdom teachings. They're bringing us right back to the mystery school teachings about holy water in various religions. And as I said, they're two languages for the same phenomena, and they're pointing us towards the same ancient truths.
It is amazing. Oh, it's a bit like a mic drop moment. You don't even need to carry on. That was just so good.
And there's so many different ancient traditions that you've touched on, we've heard. What would you say are some of your favorites that obviously there's so many, we could talk about them for hours, but what would you say some of your favorites are to share with some of our audience?
I think my top 3 favorites that have been most impactful for me in my water journey have been Agama Tirta, which is the holy water religion in Indonesia. Agama Tirta literally means water religion. It's a rough translation, but it is a sect of Hinduism that also draws on a lot of the animistic, shamanic beliefs of that culture. And it's many thousands of years old. I had the honor of studying with water priests out in Bali. I was living there for over a year. And they've been really stewarding these ancient lineage teachings about the power of water for, again, hundreds of generations. And it's really profound what they have to teach. And a lot of it is secret lineage teachings, and they perform water miracles, but they don't teach all of it to outsiders. But I did get to dive in a bit, and that was really impactful for me, and transformative, and so beautiful. And then another lineage that has really stewarded ancient water teachings in a beautiful way is the Kogi tribe of Colombia. And they have an incredibly intact water cosmology, and a powerful understanding of the ways in which water is the blueprint of reality. Water basically contains the holographic matrix of all worlds of reality, and everything that we consider to be reality, they say, is just the thoughts of water, or the dreaming of water. They also recognize that water, like us, has a mind, body, and spirit, and that the spirit of water, which they call a luna, or we might call the ether, or the Akashic field, or the quantum field, or something like this, is this ocean of pure energy that is always in contact with water, in direct proportion to its liveliness and its vitality and its crystallinity, and what we might call, its structure. But that you can't really separate the two, and that this is the wisdom that water is always tapping into. And they also have powerful teachings for us, the Western world, whom they call their little brothers. They have very beautiful teachings for us around water stewardship, water guardianship, water activism, and that sort of thing, which of course is all of our responsibility right now to step into that. And then the other that I have fallen deeply, profoundly, and passionately and unexpectedly in love with over the past several years is actually the Christian water teachings. That there are ways in which you can read the Bible through a water lens, and it opens up this completely different facet of the mystery school teachings of Christ, who is called the living waters. I mean, Christians always refer to Christ as the living waters, and there's a beautiful reason for that. There's and it has a lot to do with, Christ comes from the same root word as crystalline waters, and water is mentioned I believe it's 722 times in the Bible. It's mentioned more than love, more than hope, more than prayer. All of these things that have come to be associated with the Christian religion, water is mentioned more than that, and almost without exception, all of the miracles that were performed in the Bible had something to do with water. There are just so many deep mystery school teachings in Christianity around holy water that are often either overlooked or they're dismissed as being metaphorical. The Holy Spirit is described as being poured out, and there's just many things that are taken to be symbolic. But based on my research into water, I think they're actually very literal.
Yes, it sort of makes my head sort of go a little bit like so what does it mean to us, like for you, like when you learn something like that, where do you go with that? Like how do you feel? Because it's so profound, it's so big, it's like it makes me just want to go, what does that mean? I don't know. Do you know what I mean? Or does it
exactly? I know exactly what you mean. It's one of the deepest, if not the deepest, teaching in the world, that what we fundamentally are is the body of God. Right? 99.92% of the molecules in our body are water. And as we are taught, we were made in the image of God. And in the very beginning, when creation was formed, it says in the beginning there was nothing, and then God moved over the face of the water. So there wasn't sound, there wasn't light. It was before God even spoke, but in that moment, pre-creation, there was already God and water, and that water had a face, and God moved over that face, danced in concert with that sentient living entity of the waters. It's called the waters of the deep in the original translation, and acted in concert with that water to bring everything else into creation. So it is the most holy honor and privilege that we have in this life, that we get to commune with this powerful force that acts as the mediator between the human and the heavenly, that acts as this point of translation between the mundane and the divine. The reason why our power, our prayer, our manifestation, our intention, our repentance, our calling out to God, our hopefulness, our joy. The reason why all of this touches and affects reality and creates reality is because reality itself, as the Kogi have taught us, is a holographic matrix that is created and sustained by water. And our biowater resonates and vibrates with the power of the states of being that we intentionally cultivate within ourselves. And that amplifies our prayer, that amplifies our intention, our manifestation, or whatever your practice is.
Yeah.
Water goes beyond all specificities of dogma and is the single universal thing that we all share more than anything else. It's in every single creation story I've ever found, in every indigenous creation story that I've ever looked at, which is probably over 100, if not hundreds at this point. In every major religion, in the scriptures, it talks about it. This is the point of unification between all spiritual traditions. And so what do I do with all of that? I think that's different for every person, really. Like, to me, it just makes me really, really fall on my knees in gratitude and humility for the honor of getting to steward a drop of water as my body within this lifetime, and really wanting to steward it well and turn it into a temple. The reason why our bodies are temples of God is because our bodies are made of this divine, sacred, holy, powerful, profound substance. And then there are also these teachings in the Christian scriptures that are, I think one of the reasons why the Bible is called a living book, a living scripture, is because there are so many facets to it. You can read it from so many different lenses and angles, and each one of them is kind of equally true, whether you're a biblical literalist or you're reading it from the standpoint of kind of the astrotheology of it, that everything just represents the sun and the stars, and there's this zodiacal kind of reading to it. Or there's a man that I really respect named Ched Myers, who has translated the entire Bible through the lens of water activism and watershed discipleship. And then there's you could read it in terms of sovereignty and freedom, and how to extract ourselves from the rule of the matrix of Roman law, which I think is really important, and coming back to the private jurisdiction. But one of the most beautiful teachings, I think, is the stewarding of our internal chrism oil, that there is actually a specific iteration of our cerebral spinal fluid, which is one of the most highly crystalline waters in our entire body. And that cerebral spinal fluid, which is only one molecule different from seawater, is not only incredibly mineral rich, incredibly highly structured, and piezoelectric, meaning that it actually gives off light. It is literally this river of light in our bodies. And that the Bible can be read in terms of the journey of the chrism oil being refined within the cerebral spinal fluid and raised up the 33 vertebrae, which are depicted in Christ's 33 years of life. And that there's this crucifixion point that happens, right here at the base of the skull. And then the oil stays there for 3 days, like Christ stayed in the cave for 3 days and then rose. And then that oil actually raises back up to your central ventricle, which in other traditions has been called the cave of Brahman or the crystal palace. In the Christian scripture, it's referred to as the secret place where we meet God. And when you refine that cerebral spinal fluid, those inner waters, you actually do get a release of oxytocin, vasopressin, and DMT, dimethyltryptamine, which oxytocin, of course, is the hormone of love. Vasopressin is one of the main water management regulators in the body. You could say that it's the hormone of hydration. It helps your body to maintain its water supply a lot better. So what happens during a spiritual experience, if you go into a deep state of meditation, your body releases love and hydration, like oxytocin and vasopressin. And then DMT, which of course, dimethyltryptamine is one of the most profound entheogens. Entheogen means an internal experience of God. It's released during, psychedelic journeys, at birth and at death. And so by really working with our inner waters and learning from these ancient teachings how to steward the sanctity of these inner waters, we unlock profound states of being. We unlock the true capacity of what it means to be human, what it means to be a body of water, living on a body of water, which I would say is the greatest grace and blessing possible in this universe.
So when you talk about that process, that sort of the spinal fluid, because they talk, I think I've heard people talking about the breath work where you can move the water and I suppose get into that
the energy up.
So do you think there's people that are literally living in that state, that they've moved, I don't really know how to explain it, but they've moved that water to that point where they are literally floating around on water, with living on a different plane and living in a different world?
I would say that we're all living in a different world. Every single one of us is living in a different world right now, right? You know, we create our realities, and we have very different perceptions and perspectives of reality. And I think that the kingdom of heaven is already here right now, accessible to each and every single person. And I do think that there are people on this planet that live in constant communion and awareness with the presence of heaven, and as a channel, like an empty vessel through which the Holy Spirit can flow through their bio waters unencumbered. And I would say that those are the saints, those are the sages. You know, those are, I don't think it's about vibrating so high that we transcend these bodies. I think it's really about grounding the divinity into our water, and that's actually, you know, whether we're talking about our inner waters or our outer waters, I think that really is our responsibility to make sure that every water that comes into our care leaves us better than we found it, whether that's the water that we drink, and then we steward that water within our bodies, and we work with that internal alchemy of these different processes. And then, you know, we pee it back out into the watershed, and it weaves us into the ecology of the place where we live, so that we become an inextricable part of the land and the watershed where we are. I think that's a very sacred communion, a sacred reciprocity. But also, you know, just the water that comes through our care in general, that comes through the plumbing of our homes. You know, we have a responsibility to improve that water, to make it more vibrant and vital, because that is also going back out into the watershed again. But depending on where you live, it might just go to, you know, to somebody else's tap if you live in a big city with a closed loop system. But generally speaking, I think, you know, as bodies of water, being a water steward is one of the highest callings that we can take on, because it affects everything else. The downstream ripple effects of being a water steward impacts, as we said before, everything from the health and the biology of the collective, to the climate that we're living in, to, you know, the greater just energetic spiritual ramifications within the collective consciousness.
Yes. So let's, I suppose, go back to that, the water that comes out of your tap. Let's go back to the basics.
I think the first basic thing, I think that's what you're sharing, is the connection. That's what's so, and obviously we have it, it's just been profound the last couple of years. I think that's one of the biggest things, isn't it? Is the first thing is even just putting your hand on that tap and having that connection, which so many people just haven't got, or it's been lost. That's the biggest place, I would say. Would you?
Absolutely. And I think, not to be a conspiracy theorist about it, but even Victor Schauberger said this over 100 years ago. He said that there has been a very concerted effort to censor water wisdom keepers, and to make sure that this wisdom is not easily accessible, because it took literally hundreds of years for starting with the Roman Catholic Church, and then, you know, going down to governments, you know, hundreds of years later. There's been a very concerted effort to disconnect humanity from one of the things that is the most primal instinct that we have, which is the reverence for water. We found evidence for reverence of water dating back to the Bronze Age. That's before we were even Homo sapiens sapiens. Springs were tended to as sacred places, and it's only within the past few generations that we've lost the inheritance of these springs that had been tended to for so long. And Schauberger says, you know, because within water is the capital of capital, meaning it is the foundation of all wealth, all prosperity. There is nothing traded on the stock exchange that is not, you know, backed by water. It takes water to grow everything, water to produce everything, water to manufacture everything. It takes water, you know, to run the nuclear plants. It takes water there's nothing that water doesn't touch and affect. And therefore, water is literally more valuable than gold in so many ways. If you look at the law of supply and demand, what is the one thing that we all desperately need every single day? We all need water. And so controlling water resources and disconnecting humanity from our natural inclination to connect with water, to revere water, and to recognize water comes from the earth. Water is part of our communion with the land. And instead to insert these surrogate stand-ins between ourselves and our source, literally the source of our life. There are now these surrogate stand-ins. If you buy bottled water, you are paying a corporation for your bloodstream. If you drink municipal tap water, you are paying a government for your bloodstream. The water you drink becomes your blood within 5 minutes. And there is something so profoundly empowering to your personal sovereignty as a body, mind, and soul to restore that connection of direct transmission, receiving your blood from the earth as God intended. And so, you know, Schauberger said that even way back then, he would find very early editions of books that dove a bit into the author's discoveries about water wisdom. But then in later editions of those books, that information had either been censored or completely omitted. And so we're basically trained from a very young age to see water as the most basic, boring thing on the planet. Like, oh, water, air, dust, you know, dirt, like who cares? And it couldn't be farther from the truth. It couldn't be farther from the truth. Your water is the most direct telling sign, the most direct indicator of the quality of your mental health, the quality of your moods, of your cognition, of your focus, of your intelligence, of your health, your vibrance, your vivacity, your vitality, your immunity, and even your ability to stay in coherence. Because the more coherent the water we drink, the more coherent the expression of the field around our heart, the field around our mind. In fact, there have been studies that have been done on certain kinds of coherent full spectrum water that it can actually create brainwave coherence within 5 minutes of drinking that water. It literally makes your biofield more coherent. And that, I think, is how we truly step into our power. And it's also the most disempowering thing to the powers that be. So disconnecting us from this communion with water, I think, is maybe not entirely intentional in this generation, but I think over the course of many generations, it has been a very intentional process that now has just become like the default momentum that the machine has. But you can trace it all the way back to, I think it was 542 AD was the very first time that any legislation was passed. It was the canon from the Council of Arles that said that if anyone venerates a well, that is sacrilege and that's heresy. And then, you know, so they started outlawing the communion with water there. They started building churches on top of springs so that if you wanted to go to a sacred spring, you had to go through the priests to get to it. And then they started, and then, you know, the next one I think was in like 980 AD, I want to say. So even 400 years later, it was that hard to break this out of the human spirit that they made another decree, another mandate, and then another one about 300 years later. So like if you trace the history of reverence for water, it's been a very important part of colonization to break that out of people. And I think decolonizing water, decolonizing our relationship with water is one of the most impactful things that we can do. And it, like you said, it does come down to that communion.
Connection with water. God, it's crazy, isn't it? It makes me think about, you know, all the clients I've had in the past. You're like, you just drink your 2 liters.
It's a good start. That's more than most people do. So that's a good start. We all, you know, start where we're at.
But it's just so, but what are you drinking? Like if you're not connecting with it, it's just, there's so much to it, isn't there? It's amazing.
And people are waking up because, you know, you still get people that walk around with their whatever bottle of water, and that's their first connection with knowing that they want to step away maybe from a tap water and they want something more pure. And there is that connection, but it's still then going to that next stage of the conscious side of it, isn't it? That's where we need to help people with that side of the connection. encourage for her, should we say.
So number
So,
one, connect.
connect, yes. Number two.
Number two.
What is number two?
Number two, I would say, would be to, as Victor Schauberger said, to comprehend and copy nature. So in all of our treatment of water, we want to mimic what happens at a spring. If we're not going to forage and harvest water directly from a spring, which is the purest, most vibrant, vivacious water that we could be drinking, if you are starting with another kind of water, then we want to recreate the geology of a spring. So my number one recommendation for people is to forage if you can.
Yes.
But if you're starting with another kind of water, the steps that I teach for basically what happens at a spring is filter, structure, balance, energize, and free, and embody. So that's kind of more what
That's
you do.
one, that's
The
number two,
embodiment is
lots.
like more the lifestyle, like how do you make your cells absorb more of the water, whereas the first few steps are how do you actually improve the quality of the water itself. And I think they're equally important. Like we spend 5 steps on how to improve the water, but even just one step of lifestyle and embodiment is just as important as those, because
Yes.
if your cells aren't primed to receive the water, then it doesn't matter how much you drink, you're just going to pee it straight out. So
Yeah.
it does take kind of a strategic approach.
Yeah.
But, you know, with each of those steps, it's really a matter of recognizing that, you know, water is a sentient living entity and she has the exact same needs that we have. So with that first step, filtration, that's water's need for hygiene, you know, like we need to stay clean. And if we didn't, we would get infections and get sick and smell bad. And the same is true of water. And I think most people are starting to become more savvy of that water needs to be filtered, but most people stop there. Most people say, oh, this water has been filtered and therefore it's healthy. But that would be like me saying, oh, I showered today and therefore I'm healthy.
Yeah.
Obviously there's a lot more.
I love that analogy.
Than just hygiene.
What's wrong with that?
Right? No, that's all we have to do, right? So the filtration step is important, but it's the first step of many. And I think it's important to be aware of this because there are some types of filtration methods that actually create water that is dehydrating. I know that might sound counterintuitive to some people that water could be dehydrating, but I would say most of the water that people drink is dehydrating them, either because it's an aggressive solvent like reverse osmosis or distilled water, which yes, is technically clean of particulates. However, the molecular structure is so chaotic that there's no structure. It's not bioavailable, your body can't absorb it very well, and it's what Schauberger called an immature water. So it's had everything robbed of it. It's had its minerals and its, you know, vibratory frequencies and its microorganisms and its structure. Everything has been taken from it. And so it becomes hungry. It starts grasping at everything in its environment, trying to fill itself back up again. And as a result, it can actually leach minerals from your body over time. And mineral deficiency, in addition to being a chronic epidemic these days, is one of the manifestations of dehydration. So the water we drink should also be a mineral supplement. That's how nature designed it. That's how spring water is. And so the filtration, reverse osmosis, and distillation will take that out of the water. We want to make sure to add it back again. And then other kinds of, you know, if people just drink straight tap water that hasn't even been filtered, then, you know, that's dehydrating you on many levels as well. Like the fluoride in water can actually inhibit your cell to cell signaling. And we know that cellular voltage is the measurement of hydration. You know, when we're measuring a person's hydration level, we use a phase angle test that actually measures their cellular voltage. And then also, you know, the chlorine and chloramine that's in tap water creates a little mini genocide inside your gut microbiome every time you drink it. And there's a direct correlation between your level of hydration and your microbiome diversity, because it's not just us and our cells that needs to absorb the water that we drink. It's also all of the critters within us that also need to absorb that water. And they're so small that unless that water is structured and microclustered in specific ways, they can't absorb it very well, right? So if you're drinking, you know, bulk industrialized water, then you're not really hydrating your microbiome either, which is really important. So first step is filtration, because water needs hygiene like us. The next step is structure, because just like us, water needs movement and water needs community, right? So 2 of the biggest risk factors in human health and all cause mortality is being sedentary and being isolated. And so, they found that sitting is the new smoking, and that it's actually more dangerous to sit still for, the majority of your time than it is to smoke a pack a day. And there's studies to show that, and also that isolation is one of the biggest predictors of all-cause mortality. So what do we do to our water, right? We put it in these stagnant bottles where it's just sitting still on a shelf, and it loses all of its vitality. If you were forced to sit still in a straitjacket for hours and days and weeks and months and years, you would, if not die, you would at least go completely comatose and catatonic, and atrophy. Your entire body would atrophy, and that's basically what's happening to water.
And
when
that's
you do that
without
to her.
it being in a plastic straitjacket as well.
Exactly. Or even in the water towers, the only time that water is ever still is when ever completely still, I should say, is when she comes into human care. Because in nature, water is always moving and always cycling, and has very specific movement patterns that energize, enliven, and clean her. She has this ability to auto clean herself through certain movement patterns as well. I won't get deep into that rabbit hole because I know I'm already a bit tangential here, but the movement patterns are important. And even if you're looking at a very still lake that seems to be perfectly still, there are subtle temperature and pressure gradients that are moving, subtle microstreams within that lake. Even if you're looking at a glacier that seems to be completely still, there are subtle, slow movement patterns. There's a little bit of trickling melt. There's a little bit of evaporation. There's a little bit of, refreezing that's happening. There's always some movement within water until humans imprison her. So I think a big part of reclaiming our freedom is giving water her freedom and autonomy as well. So movement is one of the things that helps to structure water. When we put water through a flow form or a vortex, then that's one of the ways of doing this step 2, which is to structure the water. And what happens when that happens is when all of the molecules start moving together, then they start bonding together, right? Then they start creating these relationships, these hydrogen bonds. So it's really the relationships between the hydrogens and the strength of those relationships that determines the structural health of the water. Just like in, human communities, the strength of our relationships with each other, the strength of our friendships, the strength of our families, that determines the health of our overall culture and our overall community. When everyone is disconnected and isolated, then that's the ideology of a cancer cell. We basically have a cancerous culture right now where extreme individualism is lauded above everything else, but that's antithetical to 200,000 years of human evolution, when we were always a communal and tribal culture. And the same is true with water. This is the first time in history over the past couple hundred years that we have been drinking water that is completely disconnected. As a result, we have become completely disconnected. And when you create more coherence, more bonding within the community of water molecules, it just has ripple effects in so many beautiful ways. So that's the second step, because water needs water need hygiene, we need movement, we need community. And then the third step is balance. So filter, structure, balance. And this is making sure that water is eating and breathing properly. Just like we need to eat, we take in the earth element by either eating food that was grown in the earth or food that has eaten food that was grown in the earth. Water takes in the earth element by dissolving minerals inside of herself. And these minerals, when they dissolve, are called electrolytes. And they're very important to a whole well-rounded profile of water. It's also referred to as the TDS, or total dissolved solids, or the hardness of the water. And water, as I said, should be a natural mineral supplement. So water needs to eat. Water also needs to breathe, just like we do. So when water is moving, she's exchanging gases like oxygen and carbonic acid. You can see this really beautifully when you vortex water. You'll see the bubbles start to kick up. That shows the oxygenation of the water. Dr. Tom Cowan said that he believed one day it would be discovered that the gases dissolved within water are just as important as the liquid water itself. And there are many people who say, and I'm somewhat inclined to believe them, the only reason we get thirsty and we need H2O is not because we need water, but because we mostly need hydrogen.
Yeah.
It's mostly the hydrogen that actually hydrates us and gives us that hydroelectric energy. And then oxygen has this beautiful ability to bind to that hydrogen and actually keep it still in physical form, whereas otherwise H2 is just a super volatile, compound that's going to evaporate immediately. But we need that hydrogen. Dr. Albert St. Georgi, who was a Nobel Prize winner, said that hydrogen is the fuel of life. So molecular hydrogen is a gas, and it's one of the important gases that you can suffuse into water to help it to breathe. So either getting your water flowing and moving, which will help to oxygenate it, or suffusing it with molecular hydrogen gas, if you do so in a very specific way. There's a lot of swag on the market in terms of hydrogen generators that does more harm than good, but there's some good ways of generating hydrogen, which just makes it so much more hydrating. So water needs to eat and needs to breathe. That's the balance step. I would say balance also includes the microbiome of water as well, because when we get water straight from a spring, it has a really balanced microbiome profile. So it actually acts as a probiotic, and our biology expects that of us. One of the main reasons why we have, again, this epidemic of a microbiome depletion with just all of the downstream, cascades of health issues that come from that, is because we're not drinking wild spring water anymore. And the water that we do drink has been so completely sterilized, which in some cases is good. You wouldn't want to drink tap water that hasn't been sterilized, because it's been sitting stagnant in these nasty pipes where bad bacteria will proliferate. However, water that comes from nature has all of these beneficial bacteria that we actually need. We physiologically need it, and our biology expects that of us at the minimum. So that's balance. Then energize. So energizing the water is about the information that the water holds. It's about the energetic quality of that water. So just like we need quality education and entertainment, because what we absorb from our environment, we become a reflection of everything that we've learned and experienced over the course of our lives. If you have someone who has grown up just, playing violent video games and watching porn and horror movies, the quality of that person's maturity is going to be a lot different than a person who grew up with, quality education and conversation and time in nature and all of these beneficial stimuli. And so we want to make sure that the stimuli that water is receiving is very beautiful and beneficial as well, because she becomes a liquid carrier of those frequencies and signals into our body. She literally translates and transduces all of those frequency signals into biological information that our body translates into all of the many, 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 many functions that it performs, from, cell to cell signaling, to protein folding, to enzymatic reactions, to neurons firing. All of these things are mediated by water. Water is at the heart of everything that your body does, and its ability to do that well is dependent on what I consider to be like the spectrum of the palette that it has to paint with. So, one of the things that we're discovering in the field of aquaphotomics is that light is just, and this is a direct quote from Dolph Zantiga, light is just a bundle of frequencies that has to be brought in by the right water. In other words, light itself, which is pure information, has no effect on biological beings except through its translation by water. Water's ability to translate those light frequencies is determined by the level of its coherence. And so we want to make sure that the water that we're drinking, also, of course, the water that we're made of, is exposed to as many different natural frequencies along the light spectrum as possible. The early morning UV light, the dusk UV light, the moonlight, the starlight, all of this is information that our biology expects of us. And if we live a modern lifestyle, with LED lights and blue lights on our screens, and indoors sheltered from natural light, especially at night where we rarely get starlight energy, then we need to be drinking water that can bring that light information to us exogenously if we're not getting it in our lifestyle. And so light is one of the important parts of energizing water. I know you guys are very familiar with the Analemma wand at a life. And so of course that's what that does. But then there's also other ways of energizing your water through various frequencies, the Schumann resonance, sounds, prayer, song, connection, holding it to your heart, many different ways of energizing the water, just recognizing that she will become a liquid vessel of what she's been exposed to, and that water's ability to retain information is directly proportional to the formation of the molecules. So the stronger the formation, the more information she can carry. And then the final step is to free the water. And this isn't one that I go over in all the podcasts. It's one that I teach in my Navigating the Waters course. So if anybody wants to learn hands-on how to do each one of these steps, all the many ways of doing it, I have a 7-day course called Navigating the Waters that goes over all of that. But I wanted to share it with you guys because I know y'all get it. Another one of the most important aspects of water as a sentient living entity is that she is the embodiment of generosity, grace, mercy, abundance, and prosperity. There's a reason why baptisms in every culture, whether you are in Indonesia and you call it a melukat, or you are Christian and you call it a baptism, or you're a Jew and you call it a mikvah, it's in every culture. Water is used for that, not dirt, not fire, not anything else, because water has this capacity to be infinitely giving, generous, and merciful, not only physically, but energetically. And so one of the ways that we can be good water stewards is to mirror that and to also have a generous nature. And I don't believe that water should ever be privatized. I don't believe that anyone should ever have to pay for water. And I think that if you have the capacity within your lifestyle to either have the water alchemy tools that are bringing water back into its vibrant, vital state, or whether you're going and harvesting spring water directly from the earth, that you become a carrier of that, who can bring that forward into your family, into your community, and lovingly and generously give living, clean, vibrant, vital water to those people as well, because that's what the earth does. And that's what water wants. She wants to be free. She wants to be abundant. And I think that is just as important as any of the other steps. Is it's not enough to just say, oh, well, I want to make sure that my water is clean so that I can drink it, but recognizing that water is what connects all of us. It's what connects all of life, and that we get to be a part of that web of interconnection when we partner with water in this way during this step of freeing the water. And it's taught in many, many cultures that we need to be making offerings to water. Some cultures call it ofrendas or pagamentos, or in Bali they call it chanangsari. They put an offering on top of every single bit of water every single day, whether it is a little trickle of polluted runoff on the side of the road. They will literally put offerings by that water. If it is a jug of water in their kitchen, they're going to put an offering on top of that jug of water. They'll put it on the sink. They'll put it every day. Every water they see, they put offerings by it. And the Kogi tribe that we mentioned earlier in the podcast, they call it pagamento, and they say that it's basically the rent that we pay for having a body of water, that we need to pay that back to the water. We can pay that in the form of offerings. We can pay it in the form of prayers. We can pay it in the form of taking regular water and turning it into holy water every opportunity we get. We can pay that in the form of water activism and water guardianship, getting involved with being a voice on behalf of the waters in your community, or you can pay it forward by generously sharing high quality water with your community. Everyone is going to have a different way of doing this. Maybe your way of paying it forward to water is writing beautiful poetry about water, beautiful songs to offer to water. But whatever it is, water is so generous in giving us our life force. And there's a powerful reciprocity that just builds and builds and builds on itself exponentially when we start giving back to water as well. So that's why the last step in the process is free.
Very important.
Amen.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you for sharing that with us.
That was so beautiful. I mean,
thank you.
It's actually quite an emotional thing to talk about, isn't it? And I know someone who likes to give offerings to water. Don't you love that?
Beautiful.
Thank you so much for sharing all that. I mean, we could go in on each and every one of those, but
Each
I know,
section, has got so much within.
but I
hasn't
know
it?
that you, like you said, you offer workshops and all of this
specific
stuff.
classes, don't you?
And you've got something coming up on Tuesday. So tell us about that.
So my very favorite offering, bar none, that I've created, I don't know, that's hard to say, but one of them, maybe my favorite. I only run it live once per year, and it's called The Spirit of Water. And it is 8 master classes with over 18 hours worth of teaching between the 8 master classes. And it's all about the deepest, most esoteric, most spiritual dimensions of water, like the ancient mystery school teachings of water, and how, modern science has been basically proving all of them out. It goes into the science behind how and why water is the matrix of reality, how and why we can work with water to create our reality, to create incredible manifestation, prayer practices. I mean, I don't say this often, but I'm only going to say it because I'm promoting this course right now. Is that, I live my dream life. And when I first started being a water expert, I was like, what is that? Nobody's heard of that. I'm just going to be broke forever. I have to do it because it's my mission, but I'm obviously just going to be destitute, and I'm going to be that crazy lady, holding a sign on the side of the street saying, drink more water. It's like,
but crazy. But you are a very crazy, very clever, and very beautiful person.
Yeah.
You're not standing on the side of the road, all right?
I appreciate that. Well, I can say for sure that, and it's not just me saying this. There's another quote, I forget who said it, but your relationship with water is the most telling dynamic of your relationship to prosperity. And my water prayer and water manifestation practices really have given me the life of my dreams, the home of my dreams, the relationship of my dreams, the business of my dreams, the body of my dreams. And I say that with all humility, because it's really all through the grace of God and this partnering with water, who I believe to be the body of God. And our direct communion with the heart of God. And so there are certain practices that I've learned over the years. There are certain practices that I've developed over the years. I'll be teaching all of that in the Spirit of Water course. In addition to much more, we go deep into everything.
It's really weird because I keep getting this, it's a constant calling to, you've got to find a practice, Haven't I said it to you the other day?
Have actually, yeah.
And I was like, all right, okay.
I get that. I know. But it's finding that one thing, and it could be something as simple for Claire, but also for a lot of other people to find that time, because it's that connection with water, but it's also the connection with yourself, with the water. It's this beautiful play between the two, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm similar to you. Like, I find it hard to commit to any one thing very consistently. And that's one of the things that I love about these water practices is my practice looks different every single day. I'm a woman, I cycle, I feel different every day. Water is the most versatile thing on the planet. She's always in different phases and flowing through different, parts of the water cycle. And so it's a very fluid practice. It's a very dynamic practice. It's a very creative practice. But it's definitely a very effective practice. And so we're going to be going over all that. And it starts, like you said, on Tuesday, November 7th. And it's going to be every single Tuesday throughout November and December. So 8 master classes will be meeting live over Zoom. And, it will be evergreen after that. So if somebody is listening to this and they missed the deadline to sign up, you'll always be able to access the information. But if you want to join us live and be a part of the community and be able to ask questions, and there's homework with each and every module, so you can share it with everybody who's going through it together, then you definitely want to sign up by Tuesday. And I try to keep it really affordable. It's only $222 for all of that. You have lifetime access to the teachings. You also get 8 different workbooks. Each of those workbooks is a 28-day workbook, and those will help you implement all of the teachings throughout the course of 2024, because it's 8 months of guided.
There's lots of 8s there.
I know it is.
Did you do that for a reason?
That was on purpose.
It's funny because did you know that Atta in Swedish means 8? That's
we think it's Swedish.
We're sure it's Swedish, but that's where we got the name from Atta. Yeah, it's 8.
Oh, I love that. That's beautiful. Yeah. Well, water loves that figure 8. If you're tracing your finger, your Analemma through the water, that figure 8 is really fun with the water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a Tuesday for anyone that wants to sign up. We'll probably be there.
Yeah, I think we will actually.
Because I've just
Great.
finished one
Perfect.
course, haven't I? And
Yeah.
that was on Tuesday, so we can start another one.
Perfect.
Oh, perfect. Oh, I love that. Well, it's going to be, this won't mean anything to the people who are listening right now, but for you guys, it's going to be 2 hours from right now. So whatever time it is there, add 2 hours and every Tuesday.
So what's the time now?
And all the
that's
recordings
fine.
will be
7 o'clock.
Oh, brilliant.
Perfect. Yeah.
7 p.m. everybody here in the UK then.
Kids are in bed.
Come
Kind
join
of.
us. It'll be fun.
And if you want to go further afield, you have a very exciting
Yes.
thing happening, which again, we're hoping, well, through the power of prosperity in your course that we're going to do,
Yes.
you know, I'm pretty sure we'll be there.
Fantastic. Would love to have you guys there. Yeah, it's my other favorite thing that I do once a year, which is the Water is Life retreat. And so we're going to be having it in Tulum, Mexico, in the Riviera Maya. And it's basically 4 nights and 5 days of total immersion in water wisdom, water practice. We have all kinds of water practices, from underwater Janzu bodywork therapy, which just unwinds the nervous system into these profound states of rebirth. And it feels like you're going right back into the amniotic fluid, and absolutely love that. It's the best physical therapy that I've ever experienced in my life, and I've done many.
A lot.
So I'm excited to be able to share that with people, and then also ice baths, and also a traditional Mayan temazcal, which is basically a steam sauna, but in a very prayerful way inside of the traditional temazcal.
Wow.
And then we will also be, of course, swimming and singing and having water ceremonies where we sing water songs. We're going to be doing underwater group dance. The beach that we're going to is absolutely pristine turquoise water. We also go to 3 different cenotes, and cenotes are these basically like underground lakes. They're like access points to this very, very large aquifer with beautifully crystalline water that the Mayans revered as incredibly sacred and as a portal to the underworld. And so these are definitely portal points, and we will be in one of them. We'll be doing a really amazing, I shouldn't spoil it because it's kind of like the crescendo of the event, but our whole event is so watery that we finish it off with the climax of a fire ceremony, so that we can really, you know, bring passion and balance and fire into taking this stuff back into our lives after the retreat. And you will literally hold giant flames in your bare hands in a very safe way, I promise. But you'll be standing in the cenote in this ancient Mayan water, holding the flames in your hand. Is this beautiful alchemical balancing, and there's so much more too that I'm not even remembering like right now. Of course, we'll be doing water alchemy and drinking high quality water and having workshops and doing fascia yoga. So, you know, your fascia is an irrigative network in your body. It's one of the most important things for hydration. So fascia yoga, you name it. We do all the fun things. It's going to be beautiful. And then if anybody, this is kind of a side note that I actually haven't said to anybody publicly yet, and it's not even on the website or anything, but if anybody is a diver and you want to stay in the Yucatan a little bit longer after the retreat, this isn't an official part of the retreat, but I'm going to be going bull shark diving right afterwards. And if anybody wants to come with me, I think that would be really fun to share.
Wow. I mean, I'm not a diver, but you know, maybe I just dive in and
I might do some I'll swim from above, maybe.
That might work. That might work.
And when is that? When is that retreat?
So that's that's January 31st to February 5th.
Nice.
And how do people find out more about that? It's on your website, is it?
You can go to waterislife.love and then hover on events and click Tulum, and that will take you to the site. And then if you're interested in the Spirit of Water course, that one is at waterislife.academy.
Okay.
And then if you want water alchemy tools, that one is waterislife.shop.
We'll put as much as we can, obviously, below.
Yes, we'll put the links.
Yeah, all the links below. Yeah, cool.
That is amazing. We've got all our
honestly,
there's
stickers and bits of paper everywhere, and we haven't really looked at any of it. So you're going to have to come back about another 5 times.
I would love to. It's such a joy to chat with you guys. Great. I look forward to it.
Oh, thank you so much. We'll see you Tuesday anyway.
Yes.
But,
fantastic.
Yeah, thank you so much for this. We are so blessed to have you in our life and to have chatted to you. And we're
Just keep doing what you're doing. The
Absolutely
world
blown
needs
away.
more of you, and just getting as much knowledge, beauty, everything that you share out to the world, because yeah, you're just so powerful.
You're
So
amazing.
yeah, so
Oh,
beautiful
thank
You
you
love
for
that word,
being
don't
here.
you?
Yeah.
It's so mutual. I'm so grateful for you ladies too, and glad that we're connected and that we're allies on this path. And I look
Yeah,
forward to seeing
absolutely.
how that
Absolutely.
continues to grow and evolve over the years.
Yeah.
Thank you
Oh,
for
well,
all you
It
do.
will. Thank you.
Right.
Thank you. We'll leave you. Thank
Lots
you
of
so
love.
much. Bye.
Thank you, my darling.